What you're about to watch right now are the world's most dangerous jobs ever. I have actually seen some of them and it didn't really occur to me that it would be so much as dangerous as that. Let's see them together. Get started.
Smoke jumper. We all know what to do when we see a fire, right? Get as far
Smoke jumper. That is a weird name.
as humanly possible and call for help. But, of course, someone has to be the help. Firefighters have one of the most dangerous and important jobs in the world, saving
Obviously.
lives and keeping people safe in the face of catastrophe. And while they're all incredibly brave, there are some firemen who are braver than others. Meet the smoke jumpers, the firefighter elite. In the entire United States, there are only 430 of them, and they do one of the most insane but crucial jobs around and fight the fires nobody else can fight. You've probably heard of the California forest fires, which due to dry conditions have done billions of dollars in damage in the past few years alone. Well, these fires usually start out in the middle of the forest, where there are no roads or ways for traditional firefighters to get in, except for one, the sky. Smoke jumpers parachute directly into forest fires in order to keep them from spreading. Of course, one change in the wind as they're falling, and they can end up right in the middle of a blazing inferno. Thankfully, they go through incredible intensive training and know exactly what to do in case that ever happens. Skydiving, terrifying. Mountain route driver. If you've ever driven along a mountain road, you're aware of how absolutely nerve-wracking they are. Sharp, winding turns, narrow lanes. But there are people who brave these roads on a daily basis, and in some of the hardest to maneuver vehicles imaginable. In some parts of the world, buses are the only way to get from one place to another, and when these places have mountains between them, bus drivers have to be extraordinarily careful. After all, they're responsible not just for their own lives, but for the lives of everyone on board for the treacherous journey. One wrong move and the entire bus can easily start careening over a cliff, down thousands of feet before hitting a very rough sudden stop. The fact that mountainsides can be known for not being particularly stable, along with memorials for unlucky crash victims littering the sides of the roads, can't make it easy to take on this job. But somehow these courageous chauffeurs steel their nerves and manage to get their passengers to their destination safely every day.
Damn, that is actually so close to the fall.
Professional cliff diver. Many people grow up with the dream of one day being a professional athlete, and cliff diving is an extreme sport that's gained massive popularity the world over in recent years. Put the two together and you'll find the relatively fledgling world of professional cliff diving.
Oh my.
Started by Red Bull in 2011, the organization holds a handful of competitions for only the bravest and most extreme of cliff divers. Originally started in Hawaii, where men would jump off cliffs into the water below to prove their bravery, the original significance definitely still stands today, because you've gotta be hugely courageous to willingly jump off a cliff for fun. Most dives are from 50 to 80 feet in the air, with the highest being about 100 feet above the water. From heights like that, divers can hit the water at speeds of 55 miles per hour, or almost as fast as a car on the highway. With those kinds of impacts, serious injuries can happen very easily with just one wrong move. So, professional cliff divers who compete in competitions have to undergo super hardcore training to know how to react every second from the time their feet leave the cliff. Even with all the precautions and safety personnel on hand at every competition, people often break bones or go into shock and nearly drown, making cliff diving not just one of the most terrifying, but one of the most dangerous professions around. Skyscraper window washer. It's often the case in life that little details
This is such a real life-threatening job.
can be much more impressive than the big things, and that's especially true in the case of skyscrapers. I mean, sure, a big building is cool and all, but have you ever stopped and noticed how clean the windows always seem to be? It's one part janitor and one part extreme sport. Repelling window washers have one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Starting at the tips of skyscrapers, sometimes thousands of feet in the air, they have to jump over the edge backwards with nothing but a rope harness securing them to the top. While jumping off the top of a building every day might seem like the most terrifying part, that's not even the half of it. While dangling from the harness, they have to clean the windows perfectly while being slung around by winds that can reach upwards of 40 miles per hour at some altitudes. Then, while the sun is still out, they have to make it all the way down, cleaning every floor's windows as they pass. The worst part is, by the time they get to the bottom, the upper floors have already gotten dirty again.
That is such an appreciable job.
So they've got to do it all over again every single day.
Wow, look at this
Icefall
view.
Doctor. Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. Every year, more and more tourists come in by the thousands to get a shot at taking the most extreme selfie they're ever going to get. But for all those adrenaline-thirsty glory seekers to make it to the top of the mountain safely, the local Sherpas have to carve out the paths for them. Their familiarity with the mountain. On the way up, the Sherpas have to set up ladders and footholds to get tourists across massive crevices that are usually thousands of feet deep. To do this, they have to throw the ladders over the crevice, and then while it's still unsecured, crawl across on their hands and knees, with certain doom thousands of feet below them, to make it to the other side and secure the ladders so that the tourists can get across safely. Being an Icefall Doctor is one of the deadliest jobs on the planet, and with constant avalanches changing the landscape of the mountain, these brave people have to find a new, unsecured path every time people try to climb Everest. Definitely one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. Linemen. While their name might not be too familiar to you, linemen are actually some of the most important people in your day-to-day life. As a matter of fact, you couldn't be watching this video right now if it weren't for your local linemen. These brave men and women work to make sure that electricity continues flowing all over the grid, and are first on the scene when service is somehow interrupted, like when a tree falls on a power line. As crazy as it sounds, they have to actually fix the live wires by hand, with nothing more than some insulated rubber gloves between them and 1.21 gigavolts straight to the heart. For decades, linemen have consistently ranked as one of the top 10 deadliest jobs in the US, and it's not hard to see why. Electricity is nothing to play around with. One wrong move.
Damn, that is actually not a joke.
Moving, well, no pun intended, but it's lights out. Thankfully, these courageous workers are compensated pretty well, making on average $73,000 a year. Still, no amount of money is worth your life, so you've really got to have nerves of steel to take on being a lineman. Well, in this case, maybe nerves of rubber would be better. Electrician Alpinist. What would you think of a job where you only had to change a light bulb once every 6 months? You probably wouldn't imagine it being a well-paid job. Well, think again, because that's where the brave electrical alpinists come into play. In order to make sure the bulbs atop radio towers never go out, these fearless engineers climb to the top every 6 months and replace the bulb. Working one day every 6 months might not seem like too bad of a gig, until you realize that the tallest radio towers can be well over 2,000 feet tall, and don't exactly come equipped with elevators. Electrical alpinists have to climb these colossal towers by hand with nothing more than a cloth harness they have to detach and reattach every few feet, keeping them from a very long fall. With that danger in mind though, electrical alpinists can make up to $20,000 per light bulb they change, with the average US salary being $67,000 a year. Not too bad for 2 or 3 days work, no matter how terrifying.
Oh my
Lifeguard. If you've ever been to the beach or a public pool, chances are you've come across a lifeguard before and thought they have a pretty relaxing job. After all, they get to tan all day out by the water and run on the beach in slow motion. Well, if you think that, then chances are you had a pretty good day on the water. Because when the time comes, lifeguards have an incredibly serious job. Lifeguards have to be ready to respond at a moment's notice if someone's drowning, stung by a jellyfish, or even attacked by a shark. On some especially dangerous beaches, like the famous surfing spot, the 7 Mile Stretch, lifeguards have to save as many as 20 people a day. Thankfully, through intensive training, good conditioning, and some serious courage, lifeguards are able to save tens of thousands of people every year, and look good while doing it. Wind turbine technician. Wind power is quickly becoming one of the most popular forms of green energy on the planet. It's pretty simple, right? Wind moves a fan on a turbine, and that makes electricity. As always, it's never that simple. Those giant wind turbines can get damaged, and since they need to be repaired quickly, wind turbine mechanics are on the job. These slightly insane but definitely very brave men and women actually have to climb up these 350-foot high turbines with nothing more than the kind of rope harnesses rock climbers use. Then, while they're still moving, they have to latch onto the blades themselves and then manually fix any holes with sanders and drills, all the while hanging 350 feet in the sky while the wind whips you around like a rag doll. With how wildly dangerous the job is, you'd think wind turbine technicians would take home a hefty paycheck, but on average, they only make about $53,000 a year. Well, there are people out there who like climbing to death-defying heights for free, so it's probably pretty cool to get paid to do it. Gardener.
That's actually right.
While being a gardener might actually look like one of the safest jobs around, not worthy of a spot on this list, looks can be very deceiving, especially when it comes to plants. Some of the most beautiful plants can be some of the most deadly, and at the Poison Garden in England, you'll find some of the most beautiful and the most deadly plants in the world. And where there's a garden, there needs to be a gardener. Started by the Duchess of Northumberland as a morbidly fascinating tourist attraction, every plant in the garden is poisonous, with some being able to kill you with just a few drops of their juice, or burn your skin for up to 7 years. As a very well-advised precaution, the gardeners at this truly unique site have to wear protective clothing to cover their skin, eyes, mouths, and face so they don't come into contact with any of the lethal foliage. That's one tourist attraction I think I'll stay far away from.
Yeah, that's right. I think being a salad cutter is the most important dangerous job. Have a good night.